My daughter-in-law thought I was too old to notice her trick. Right at my own celebration of success, in front of dozens of people, she secretly dropped a fine powder into my glass of wine. If I had not been sharp-eyed, I might have collapsed at the table, and everyone would have believed it was nothing more than an old man's heart attack. And on that very evening, I turned a murder plot into a staged exposure in front of dozens of witnesses. Before I continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell me where you are listening from in the comments. Your support is what drives me to reveal the entire truth. My name is Victor Hale, and I am 69 years old. My whole life has been tied to calloused hands, to the smell of cement and wood, to dusty construction sites. People talk about success with framed diplomas or shiny awards. I am different. The only thing I have been proud of over the decades is this house, a small villa on the edge of Asheville, where my wife and I raised our son, and the place I still call home, even when I am alone. But there is a bitter truth. That home has been cold for a very long time. My son, Nathan, and his wife, Clarissa, have for years barely kept in touch with me. I still remember lying in the hospital, the heart monitor beeping steadily, my phone right beside me. I called Nathan once, twice, 3 times, only to receive a curt text in the end. Busy in a meeting. Dad, take care. On Christmas, I prepared roast chicken, wine, and even hung a wreath at the door. I called to invite them home. Nathan said he was busy with work, and Clarissa said she had a business trip. I sat alone at the dinner table, staring at the empty chairs where my son and daughter-in-law should have been, my heart twisting. Hours later, when I opened social media, I saw the picture they had posted publicly. The two of them smiling brightly at a lavish dinner at Clarissa's parents' house, with turkey, red candles, and a decorated tree. The joy in Nathan's eyes felt like a blade piercing me. In that moment, I realized bitterly, they were not busy. They simply did not want to come to me. On Thanksgiving, I tried calling again. This time, they did not pick up. Later, I learned they were vacationing in Florida, posting photos, laughing on the beach, while I quietly chewed a store-bought turkey meal. I remained patient. I thought maybe they were young, caught up in their careers, and one day they would realize their old father needed a call, needed a hug. I kept texting. Nathan, Dad misses you. Come home for dinner this weekend. Or, Clarissa, I bought the wine you like. Come by someday to share it. Rarely was there a reply, and if so, just, busy, another time. You know the feeling of calling into space, don't you? As if you were knocking on a house with no one inside. Little by little, I understood that to them, I was just a faint shadow in memory. An old, bothersome father, not worth their time. The irony is, I never stopped thinking about them. On freezing winter days, when wind rustled the pines behind the house, I imagined Nathan as a boy, playing outside with a leather ball, cheeks flushed red with cold. I remembered how he would run to me, his tiny hands frozen as he slipped them into my cracked ones, looking up and saying, Dad, your hands are so big. I want hands like that too, so I can build houses with you. I remembered late nights, me bent over construction drawings, while Nathan scribbled beside me. He handed me a paper with a crooked little house but a big door. Proudly, he said, This is a house for you, so you won't have to work so hard anymore. Those memories were like a small flame, warming my heart through lonely days. But that flame also burned, reminding me how much reality had changed. Clarissa, my daughter-in-law, from the day she entered this family, never truly saw me as kin. Not only indifferent, but she always tried to show that I was outdated, that the values I held meant nothing. I still recall one dinner when Clarissa calmly said, in front of everyone, These days people must know how to enjoy life, living like Dad Victor, saving every penny, clinging to things nobody needs. Then a whole life ends up stuck in this old house. Nathan stayed silent, never defending me, letting those words cut into me like a knife. I swallowed it all. I did not argue. In my heart, I held on to the belief that true value needs no one's approval. Time will answer. Yet for years afterward, the coldness persisted. I called, and they did not answer. I texted, and they did not reply. More and more, I realized the distance was not because they were busy, but because in their hearts, I no longer had a place. You may ask, why did you keep calling, keep reaching out, keep waiting, after so many disappointments? The answer is simple. Because I am a father. In a father's heart, there is always room for his child, no matter how many times that child turns away. I still hoped that one day Nathan would remember he had a father in this world, hair gone white, hands trembling, only wishing to hear, Dad. But the more I hoped, the more I saw. I was only talking to emptiness. In long nights, sitting alone on the wooden chair by the porch, listening to crickets, I asked myself countless times, where did I go wrong? Did I not do enough for my son? Or is family bond always this fragile? And those very questions, those years of abandonment, became the foundation, the fuel for everything that was about to unfold. Because when Clarissa and Nathan finally knocked on this house's door, it was not to ask about my health, not to embrace their father after years apart. They often say harsh words from strangers pass like the wind. But when they come from your own blood, from those you once raised with all your heart, they carve into you like marks on stone. I learned that truth most clearly in the years my son and daughter-in-law mocked my choices. More than 20 years ago, when I was still strong and working daily at construction sites, I began saving every penny, not to buy a luxury car, not to splurge, but to protect my old age. I did not want one day to depend on anyone, not even my son. That is why I turned to forest plots on the outskirts of Asheville. At that time, they were so cheap that people called me foolish. Victor? Forest land? Who would buy it? At best, you can graze cows. It has no value. But I had a feeling. I believed one day the city would expand, and those dismissed plots would change lives. I remember the first evening I told Nathan. He was in his early 20s then, newly married to Clarissa. I said I had just signed for another lot up north. The land was wide with a small stream. I thought it would be valuable later. Nathan lifted his eyes from the phone, smirked. Dad wasted money again. What is there besides trees and rocks? Are you sure anyone will want it later? Clarissa, sitting beside him, laughed even louder. She set her wineglass down, mocking, planning to build a cabin with black bears? People invest in stocks, and you hoard forest land. Thoughtless. I stayed silent. I did not want to argue. But inside, it stung cold. I only nodded and poured myself another cup of hot tea, as if to wash away the shame in my own home. In the years after, I kept buying more lots, each time hearing the same words. Once Nathan even snapped, Dad, if you want to help me, just give me cash. I need capital to start my company. These lands are useless. Do you know how people laugh at you? I clenched my teeth. In my head echoed the question. Was my son treating me like an ATM? But I did not dare say it out loud, afraid a wall would rise between father and son that could never be broken. Clarissa was worse. She had no restraint, openly insulting me in front of her friends. My father-in-law thinks he is smart, but he only buys garbage. Who would be stupid enough to invest in forest land? Her friends burst out laughing while I sat in silence, fingers tapping lightly on the glass as a habit to hide my shame. That night, I went home, sat alone on the porch, listened to the crickets, and asked myself, am I really wrong? Yet despite the mockery, I held on to my belief. Maybe because I was used to waiting. A lifetime in construction taught me that a strong foundation does not show its value immediately. It takes time. It takes patience. Land is the same. I quietly cared for it. On weekends, I inspected each plot, marked boundaries with stakes, and planted wooden fences. Many times, people looked at me and shook their heads. Old Victor still clings to impossible dreams, but I did not care. Only one thing stung. My son never once went with me. I had hoped Nathan would drive with me to the outskirts, look at the mountains, and plan for the future together. But no. To him it was all meaningless. I remember one day, clearly. It was pouring rain. I had just returned from the site, clothes soaked. Nathan came over, bringing Clarissa. As I dried my gray hair, I told them I just signed for another piece of land. This one is near a lake, with beautiful scenery. I think a small resort could be built there. Clarissa scoffed, turned to Nathan. See? Money that should have been enough for us to open a shop, he wasted on another useless patch of land. Nathan said nothing, only lowered his head, but I saw his eyes, filled with annoyance and disdain. That night, I lay awake for hours. I remembered when he once drew a house with a big door for me. He once said he would build a home for me to rest in. And now it was he who treated the bricks I was laying for the future as trash. Those years I truly felt abandoned in my own family. I bore the coldness of unanswered calls and the contempt for my choices. But I stayed silent, stayed patient, kept investing, kept believing. Deep down, I knew one day the truth would answer for me. And that day finally came. But when it came, I realized not everyone is ready to accept the truth. Some will try everything to kill it. There were days I sat alone on the porch, staring at the forest and asking when my patience would be rewarded. The answer came sooner than I expected. Asheville began expanding. People talked of resorts, luxury housing, and industrial parks. Planning maps appeared in newspapers, and precisely, the forest plots once ridiculed were now highly sought after. Real estate companies came knocking. Some days I welcomed 3 or 4 groups, all ready to pay high prices. I quietly signed contracts, lot after lot sold, and within 2 years, my account held more than $31 million. I sat in front of the computer screen, looking at the long string of numbers, my heart trembling with both fear and joy. After years of ridicule, of being despised, now everything proved I was not foolish. I remember the morning the bank called to confirm the transfer. I had just set down my coffee cup, sunlight streaming through the window, catching dust motes in the air. A quiet moment, but to me, the most triumphant of my life. I did not cheer. I did not brag. I just sat silently thinking of the road I had walked. From an old laborer saving every penny, mocked by his son, despised by his daughter-in-law, to this moment, I had won. Neighbors heard the news. They patted my shoulder, praised my patience, and praised my vision. I smiled, but inside felt hollow. Because all these years I had learned to live as though I had no son. I was used to a kitchen with only one set of dishes, used to a dining table with empty chairs, used to holidays spent in silence. I had nearly stopped thinking of Nathan, stopped expecting a call, stopped hoping for a kind word. And so when the phone rang one day showing my son's name, my heart truly shook. Half joy, half dread and confusion. I picked up, and Nathan's voice, warm in a way I had not heard in years, said, "Dad, it's been so long since I visited. I heard about your success in selling land. I'm so happy for you." I nodded, though he could not see. "Thank you, son, I'm fine." Clarissa chimed in, sweet as honey. "We are really proud of you. Not everyone has foresight like you." Words that once would have made me happy now pierced like thorns. Then Nathan lowered his voice, each word carefully measured. "Dad, I'm actually in trouble. My business failed and debts piled up. I didn't want to tell you, but many nights I couldn't sleep, thinking of childhood. I remembered when you carried me on your shoulders at the fair, remembered the hot hamburger you bought on cold days. You always said you would be there for me. Now I just hope you can help one last time. $6 million for you. Now it's nothing. But for me, it's my life," Clarissa quickly added, honey dripping. "That's right, Dad. $6 million will give us a chance to start over, pay debts, rebuild our future. You don't want your son to suffer forever, do you? I sat there, hearing every word, my heart aching. If Nathan truly loved me, if he still remembered that old embrace, still held a trace of blood bond, then this money, or even more, I would give without hesitation. But I knew if he loved me, he would not have abandoned me all these years. He would not have left me alone in the hospital, alone on Christmas, alone to grow old in silence. Everything he said now was only a disguise, a polished performance. I knew he needed money, not a father. I sighed, forcing calm. This money is my life's sweat, my old age's support. If you need help, I'll find a reasonable way, but not as you say. The line went silent for a few seconds. Then Nathan spoke, his voice heavier, pleading, Dad, I know you've suffered enough. I don't want to trouble you, but I am truly desperate. If you help, I promise I'll never forget. 6 million may be little to you, but for me, it's my future. Dad, please think of me the way you used to. My heart froze. His voice was emotional, but I knew it was only a performance. I knew I was no longer speaking to the boy who once drew a house for me, but to someone else, a man who saw his father as a walking wallet. I hung up with trembling hands. Outside, the wind howled through the trees like the mocking laughter of fate. I knew this was only the beginning of a real storm. After that phone call, I thought everything would stop at a few pleas. But just 1 week later, Nathan and Clarissa appeared at my door. I still remember that afternoon clearly. The last light of day spread gold across the stone path, and the wind rustled through the pines. I heard a car stop at the gate, then urgent knocks at the door. When I opened it, I saw Nathan in a suit, but wrinkled, his tie loose, his gaunt face put on. Clarissa was different, an elegant black dress, a glittering designer handbag, eyes pleading, but the corners of her mouth tilted in a calculating smile. I invited them into the living room. Clarissa quickly set a gift box on the table, a bottle of mid-range red wine, just enough to show consideration, but not enough to hide their haste. Nathan sat across from me, fingers laced, eyes lowered. His voice trembled as if preparing for a performance. Dad, I know last time I made you sad. I'm not worthy of your trust, but I'm truly at a dead end. Bank debt is clinging to me. The company I started has no capital to keep going. I can't sleep at night, and Clarissa is bearing it with me. We have no other way but to ask you. Clarissa immediately picked up, voice sweet as if pouring honey into my ear. Dad, Victor, you are Nathan's only support. $6 million for you is not too great a sacrifice. But for us, it's a lifeline. We promise to repay, to prove to you that we are worthy. I quietly poured tea, letting the scent of dried leaves rise and smother their forced sweetness. In my heart, every word they said only reminded me of the years I was abandoned, the days I sat in the hospital without a trace of my son, the holidays I ate alone while they beamed at someone else's table. If Nathan truly saw me as his father, if Clarissa truly saw me as family, they would not have waited until today to show up, would not have waited until I had money to knock. I looked straight into my son's eyes and asked slowly, Nathan, do you remember the last time you came to visit your father of your own accord? He fumbled, looked at Clarissa. She squeezed his hand as if signaling him. Nathan swallowed and muttered, Dad, I was wrong. But I promise, if you help me this time, we'll be like before. I'll come home for dinner every week, and I'll bring Clarissa. We'll be a family again. Hearing it tightened my heart. The promise sounded familiar, but as if written on a promissory note. I set the teacup down, my voice low. A family cannot be bought with $6 million. Clarissa still did not let go. She leaned forward, eyes shimmering. Dad, please don't be too harsh. This truly is our only chance. If you don't help, the bank will seize the house, and the company will go bankrupt. Nathan could lose everything. You wouldn't bear to watch your son fall into the abyss. I looked at them, Nathan, whom I once carried on my shoulders, now sitting there with a face pretending to be weary. Clarissa, who once humiliated me, now straining to act the part of a dutiful daughter-in-law. I knew clearly it was all a shell. They had not come back for kinship. They had come for money. Outside the window, the evening light faded, leaving darkness to blanket the room. I sat up straight and gently shook my head. Inside me rose a feeling both painful and resolute. If I softened, everything I had guarded all my life would vanish like smoke. And more importantly, I would forever be nothing but a walking wallet in their eyes. After that meeting, I understood the distance between my son and me had become a chasm that could not be filled. But at that very moment, I told myself I could not let that pain devour the rest of my life. I had given my youth, had endured enough loneliness, and now that success had arrived, I deserved to celebrate, properly once. I decided to host a grand party, not to flaunt the $31 million, but to mark a chapter closing and a new one opening. I wanted friends, those who had shared every hard stage with me, by my side. I wanted the neighbors who once saw me limp home in work clothes, covered in lime dust, to witness the moment I held my head high. One early autumn afternoon, I called Susan, the woman who had handled many large events in town. Her voice rang bright over the phone. "Mr. Victor, I've heard about your land deal. Congratulations. How would you like us to prepare the party?" I spoke slowly, every word measured. I want everything to be truly perfect. This party is for me, but also for all the true friends who stood by me. Please prepare a warm space, elegant but not ostentatious. Susan laughed. I understand. We'll handle everything from A to Z. You just sit back and enjoy. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in days. That night, I sat at my desk and spread out the guest list. Names appeared one by one. Jim and Martha Patterson, the couple who were old friends from my days on site. Frank Morrison, the banker who once refused me a loan, but later became a close friend. Doctor Sarah Chen, who had cared for my health for 10 years. The Costellis, neighbors who always encouraged me. Each name warmed my heart. These were the ones who truly valued me, not for money, but for friendship. I decided not to write Nathan and Clarissa's names. In my heart, there was still a little struggle, but in the end, my hand stopped over the blank space. If they wanted to come, they would find a way. I would not take the initiative. In the days that followed, I was busy in a joyful way. I went to choose wine at Romano's Fine Spirits, where the owner, Vincent, personally brought out rare bottles. I chose Dom Perignon for the toast, and a few old Bordeaux for friends to savor. Vincent lifted a bottle and laughed. "Mr. Victor, from the days you came in with muddy boots, I knew one day you'd throw a big party. Now that day has come." I also went to the flower shop and chose bouquets of white roses, lilies, and orchids, the kinds my wife loved when she was alive. I wanted to place them around the villa so she would feel present. I even inspected the tablecloths and cutlery myself. Every detail had to be meticulous. On the morning before the party, I woke early. Golden light covered the garden and birds chirped merrily. I stepped outside, took a long breath, and felt a strange peace. In the kitchen, the smell of roasted coffee filled the air, mixing with a flutter of excitement. I spread the guest list again and marked in red those who had confirmed. More than 40 people, enough to fill the house with laughter and chatter. I pictured the next night, lanterns strung along the walkway, gentle jazz music, friends raising glasses to congratulate me, and me standing in the middle, no longer a lonely man. In that joy, a flicker of unease passed through me, but I brushed it aside. I sipped coffee, watched the sunlight gild the garden, and told myself, this party will be the most beautiful moment of my life. That morning I woke in an unusually bright mood. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, golden as honey across the room. I got up, threw open the window, cool autumn air rushing in with the scent of pine from distant slopes. In the kitchen, the espresso machine hissed, and the aroma of beans filled the house. I put on a deep navy suit I had kept carefully, straightened my tie before the mirror, smoothed my silver hair, and looked at my reflection. Today I was no longer the lonely old man. Today I was the host of a grand party, a man who had stood up after all the contempt. By noon, the catering staff had arrived, carrying boxes of decorations and trays of prepared food. I walked around the house, watching them hang lanterns, lay white cloths over the long table on the terrace, and place vases of lilies and roses in their exact spots. Test jazz drifted from the speakers, melding with birdsong to turn the air into a living painting. When the sun set, my villa transformed into a shimmering space. Warm lights threaded through the leaves, reflecting off the crystal on the tables. Bottles of wine rested in ice buckets, beads of fizz glinting in candlelight. I stood on the steps, took a long breath, and felt my heart beating faster than usual. At exactly 7 o'clock, the first car stopped at the gate. Jim and Martha Patterson stepped out, wearing the same familiar smiles. Jim threw his arms around me. "Victor, you did it!" Martha handed me a box of her homemade cookies, rich with butter and cinnamon. Moved, I led them inside, our laughter ringing like the opening note. Guests arrived one after another. Frank Morrison shook my hand firmly. "Doctor." Sarah Chen smiled and recalled old stories, and the Castelli couple brought a bottle of homemade olive oil. The house buzzed with chatter, every hand lifting a glass in celebration. Memories revived, jazz threading softly through applause. Just then, headlights swept the yard again. A sleek black sedan stopped at the gate. The door opened. Nathan stepped out first, in a light gray suit, face tense yet forcing a smile. Clarissa followed, a fitted black evening gown, a gift box wrapped in glittering silver paper in her hand. What made me pause was not the two of them, but the couple standing behind. An elderly man with neatly kept silver hair in a suit, and an older woman, petite, gentle-eyed, in a pale blue dress. Nathan spoke. "Dad, we couldn't miss this important day. These are Clarissa's parents, the Whitakers. They were eager to congratulate you." Mr. Albert Whitaker stepped forward, offering his hand, his voice warm. "Heard a lot about you, Victor. It's an honor to be here today." Mrs. Lorraine smiled, her eyes shining with sincerity. "We truly admire your grit." "Clarissa has told us so much about her father-in-law." I nodded, hiding the turmoil inside, then opened the door wider and ushered them in. My friends turned, briefly surprised to see Nathan's whole family show up, but they smiled politely in welcome. Nathan and Clarissa blended in quickly, shaking hands, offering compliments. Clarissa deftly praised the flowers and the arrangement. The Whitakers were composed, chatting with Martha and Sarah, making everything look like a warm reunion. I stepped back a pace, a glass still in my hand, and watched the scene. Light, music, and laughter braided together into a picture that seemed perfect. But in that moment, my heart kicked strangely, and I shook it off, telling myself, today belongs only to joy. The party's energy rose toward its peak. Gentle jazz, the clink of glasses, and bursts of laughter spread across the lamplit garden. Nathan slipped right in, smiling broadly, throwing an arm around my old friends, retelling stories that sounded rich with family memories. "My father," he said, voice firm, "taught me that perseverance is worth more than gold. Without his example, I'd never have dared to start a business." Guest nodded, patted my shoulder, eyes admiring. Clarissa was more charming than ever. She praised the flowers, the wine, even the way I'd lined old photos along the hall. She smiled sweetly. "I'm lucky to be a daughter-in-law in a family with such traditions." "Dad Victor, your patience and vision inspire us." Those words poured like honey, and a few guests leaned toward me to whisper, "You're fortunate. What a considerate daughter-in-law." I smiled back, but the smile never reached my heart. In the crowd, the Whitakers fit in naturally. Albert spoke about teaching for 30 years, his warm voice delighting Doctor. Chen. Lorraine talked about her rose garden, making Martha Patterson's eyes light up. They were sincere, courteous, and clearly proud to see their daughter and son-in-law standing shoulder to shoulder with my family at such an elegant celebration. Looking at them, my throat tightened. They were decent people, yet they had no idea that their daughter had so often scorned and abandoned me. I drifted back under a tree, wine rippling in my glass. From a distance, I heard Nathan raise a toast. Everyone, lift a glass to the man who turned rock and soil into gold. I am proud to call him father, applause thundered. I nodded, my gaze sliding to Clarissa. She stood beside me, eyes shining as if brimming, and lightly tapped her glass to mine. To family, she whispered, to a new beginning. People clapped and cheered, many looking at me with emotion as if this were the reconciliation everyone had hoped for. I took a small sip, kept my smile, but inside I chilled. I knew these sweet words were not meant for me, they were meant for the ears around us, to paint a picture of perfect reunion. Only I knew that the canvas beneath was the years of abandonment. I stood there, amid the shimmer and the music, hearing my friends' cheerful toasts, watching Albert and Lorraine happily chatting with everyone. It all looked like a complete reunion, but I, the only one who had tasted the truth, understood. This layer of honey was just the prelude, and once it melted, what remained would be bitter. The party settled into its finest rhythm. Soft jazz, bright laughter, and the clinking of glasses rang through the glowing garden. I moved among friends, shaking hands, hugging, hearing their congratulations. My heart warmed, yet I felt distant. Jim raised his glass high, voice almost singing. Victor, you are proof that patience is rewarded. We must celebrate you properly. Applause and shouts of Victor choked me for a moment. Nathan stood right beside me, beaming his arm around me like a proud son. Clarissa glided everywhere, smiling and chatting, praising the food and decor. In everyone's eyes, she was the perfect daughter-in-law. But from a step away, I noticed she kept an eye on the bar. Just as I turned back to speak with Doctor Chen, Clarissa quietly moved to the table where the glasses reserved for me and a few important guests were set. I saw her lift a napkin, still smiling at the catering staff, then lean in quickly. Her fingers slipped out a small packet, the motion as swift as a blink. When I tracked her, a fine pale powder had already fallen neatly into the glass intended for me. She stirred gently with a spoon, deft enough that no one would notice without looking straight at her. Seconds later, she turned back, radiant, her voice clear. Dad, everyone is here. Please raise a glass and say a few words, Nathan chimed in. Yes, Dad, everyone's waiting for you. I moved toward the table, my hand trembling slightly as I picked up the glass I had just watched Clarissa dose. The weight of it felt heavy, unusually cold. Clarissa stood a little behind, her eyes locked on my every move, that concentration chilling my skin. I lifted the glass to chest height, keeping a smile so no one would suspect. Inside, a fierce intuition rose. A single sip and it would all be over. The wine in my hand shimmered under candlelight, its red gleaming like a gem. Around me came the cheers. Victor, raise your glass. Nathan stood close, face flushed with drink, thumping my shoulder. Clarissa, just off to my side, looked the very picture of a dutiful daughter-in-law, proud of her father-in-law. Only I knew what was in that glass. I kept my smile, lowered it a beat, then feigned a hand switch, setting it down and smoothly taking another. A tiny move, as quick as a breath. No one noticed in the buzz. Clarissa did not catch the switch. Her eyes stayed glued to my hand, her smile bright, eager. For the moment, I would bring the rim to my lips. The music softened, candles flickered. I raised the clean glass to my chest. Everyone lifted theirs with mine. Joy swelled. Laughter rippled through the garden. And just then, Albert Whitaker, Clarissa's father, standing near the table, casually picked up the glass I had just set down. Smiling kindly, he lifted it high. Let me be the first to toast Victor. I went cold in an instant. One sip and he would swallow the poison. My heart hammered, but my face stayed calm. I stepped quickly to him, set a hand on his shoulder, my voice low but easy. Albert, I was saving that glass for the finale, for the special toast. Let me get you another. The crowd laughed, thinking me merely meticulous. Albert chuckled and set the glass back, taking a different one. The merriment swelled again. Glasses chimed, cheers rolled. I touched the clean glass to theirs and smiled serenely. Clarissa looked at me, eyes bright, smile taut with certainty that I had just drunk what she prepared. The party seemed complete, but only I knew. A match had begun, and the next move would no longer belong to her. The clinking of glasses rang out, friends smiling, toasting, drinking deep. I too lifted my glass, but only sipped lightly, leaving a thin trace of wine on my lips to keep up appearances. Applause erupted. Cheers rolled across the candlelit terrace. Clarissa stood among the crowd, her face radiant, eyes gleaming with happiness. She believed I had just drunk the poisoned glass, believed I would collapse in moments as if from a natural heart attack. That look sent a chill down my spine, but at the same time awakened another force in me, the strength of a man who knew he was no longer prey. I recalled the look in Clarissa's eyes as she slipped the powder into the glass, her hand trembling slightly as she stirred, then masking it all with a charming smile. Every detail burned into my memory. I stood among friends, spoke a few short words of thanks, my tone calm and warm, but in my mind I was already setting the next move. I needed time. I needed Clarissa to be certain her plan had succeeded, that I was nothing more than a body waiting to fall. And when her play reached its climax, I would end it with the truth. Albert and Lorraine Whitaker still chatted innocently with guests, unaware that just a breath ago, Albert had nearly picked up the death glass. Nathan laughed loudly, eyes glowing with false pride, and Clarissa, standing right behind, smiled but never stopped watching me. Slowly I set my glass on the table, meeting her eyes for an instant. Just a second, but enough to see a hidden flicker of unease there. I turned away quickly, resuming conversation, leaving her convinced I suspected nothing. But inside, my heartbeat drummed, like war. I knew if I chose the right moment, if I showed the right proof, her mask would shatter before dozens of witnesses. And tonight, at this very party, I would not only save my life, but expose the true face of the woman who sought to destroy me with poison hidden in a smile. When the laughter and music softened, I tapped my spoon against the glass, a clear note drawing every eye toward me. I smiled, my voice deep and steady. Friends, neighbors, those I call family. Tonight we toast to joy, but I must speak a truth. Not everyone here came to celebrate. The air tightened like a drawn bow. Clarissa stood just behind, her smile frozen though her eyes trembled. Nathan frowned. Dad, what are you saying? I pointed to the glass left on the table. That glass holds poison. I saw with my own eyes Clarissa drop powder into it, stir, then set it back as if nothing had happened. Had I not acted, Albert, her own father, would have drunk it. The garden exploded in gasps. Albert froze. Lorraine clutched his arm. Clarissa went pale, but moments later burst into tears, her voice breaking. No, you're mistaken. I was only arranging the wine. Nathan stammered. Clarissa, say something. I stepped slowly toward the glass, my voice firm. If nothing is wrong, then let me keep it as evidence. Suddenly, Clarissa lunged forward. With a sharp flick, the glass shattered, red wine spilling across the stone. She covered her face, feigning panic. Oh, how clumsy! I spilled it. Silence thickened, then whispers rose again. Clarissa sobbed, choking out, I swear I did nothing wrong. Why does Father hate me so much? Nathan jumped in front of her, voice trembling. Dad, you've gone too far. This is my wife, I know she'd never do such a thing. Maybe you missaw, or you've had too much to drink. A few guests nodded, murmuring, maybe he really was mistaken. Wine makes the tongue loose. Another sighed. He's old. Maybe his eyes deceived him. Lorraine clutched her husband's hand, voice shaking. No, my daughter couldn't. Albert whispered. Could he be wrong? Lorraine shook her head, but her eyes wavered. More murmurs. Maybe Victor's tipsy. Suspicion spread fast, voices overlapping like sparks in dry grass. Chaos buzzed, arguments, heavy breaths, like a fire ignited in the party itself. I stayed silent, letting the noise swirl, then slowly lifted my head, my voice cutting sharply. Very well. If there is doubt, let the truth speak. I turned to the event staff, my eyes cold. Please connect the stage screen to the overhead camera feed. I asked you to record this party as a keepsake. And now it will show the truth, a frozen moment. Then the big screen in the corner lit up, candlelight glinting in everyone's eyes. And there it was, Clarissa, in her black dress, slipping out a small packet, tilting it over my glass, pouring fine powder, stirring carefully, then replacing it with a bright smile. Every detail is clear, undeniable. Gasping breaths, horrified cries spread through the garden. Nathan went rigid. Albert stepped back, and Lorraine clutched her chest. Clarissa stood rooted, face white as chalk, her fake smile shattered. I looked straight at her, my voice steel. The evidence is right here, and all have seen it. No one spoke after the screen went dark. The night wind sighed through the trees like the sky itself grieving. Clarissa stood frozen, pale, eyes wide like someone stripped of a mask. Nathan turned to her, lips trembling. Clarissa, you... Why? But she did not answer. Tears poured as she stammered excuses, then suddenly screamed, It was all for money. Because he has everything and we have nothing. You think I want to live in debt and contempt? Her confession ripped the silence. Albert's face burned red, and Lorraine sobbed uncontrollably, shaking her head in disbelief. My child, how could you? Guests murmured, their eyes mixing pity and fury, watching every image of Clarissa collapse before them. Nathan dropped into a chair, hands on his head, the proud man of hours ago gone. I stepped forward, my voice calm but cutting. If you see human life as worth no more than a few checks, then you have ended your place in this family yourself. Clarissa shrieked, grabbed her purse, and bolted from the party, heels clattering against the stone. Nathan stumbled after her, silent, leaving only a trembling shadow fading into the night. Albert and Lorraine stood stunned, numb. At last Albert stepped forward, bowed his head, voice low and broken. Victor, I have no words but apology. My daughter has gone too far. But you saved me, saved this gathering. Lorraine wiped tears, placed her hand over mine, whispering, You did not lose a family. You have gained us. I nodded, my chest swelling with both bitterness and warmth. Friends came one by one, laying hands on my shoulder, offering words of respect. They had seen not only that I survived, but that truth had been revealed, justice laid bare before all. That night, as guests departed, I stood alone in the garden, staring at shards of glass glinting on the stone. Candle flames dimmed, but inside me a clarity burned bright. I had lost part of my family, but I had also found who truly counted as family, those who did not abandon, did not use, did not harm me. Albert and Lorraine stayed longer, helping me clear the tables, then left with an embrace as tight as a vow. When the door shut behind them, the house fell quiet again. I poured myself a new glass of wine and sipped slowly. This time, the wine was truly sweet, for it no longer carried the taste of betrayal, only the flavor of freedom. And I knew from now on what I had would never belong to the greedy, but only to those worthy. Justice does not always come from courts. Sometimes it arrives the moment the truth is exposed before every eye. If you feel my story, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment about where you are listening from, and share this video. The next story is waiting for you in the corner of the screen.